We are learning Megila Daf Yud Beis. We left off on Daf Yud Aleph Amid Beis, 8 lines before the bottom of the Amid. We are going to be concluding the sugya that deals with the mistake that Achashverosh made by thinking that the words of the prophet of the Navi Yirmiyahu, that the Yidden are going to be redeemed 70 years after their galus, his beginning point was wrong. He therefore concluded that the 70 years just finished and the Jewish people were not yet redeemed. And that was the reason why he made the feast. You know, the feast that we learn about in the beginning of the Megillah, as the Gemara pointed out, on one hand, it says that it was Kesheves Hamelach Achashverosh, which sounds like he made the feast as he became a king. But then the Megillah says that he made it in the 3rd year of his kingdom. And as the Gemara explained, that it was only when he entered his 3rd year that he concluded erroneously that, I'm not like Belshazzar, who Taka made the wrong cheshbon. I'm making the right calculation, and the Jewish people are not being redeemed, and therefore they will never be redeemed. And he brought out the utensils of the holy Beis HaMikdash to be used at that feast. And that is what caused the downfall of his wife Vashti, as we'll learn more details. So we're going to finish the sugya of cheshbonos. We're going to learn the importance of getting personally involved in all holy endeavors. We're going to have some statements of our sages of mipnei ma neschayvu sheneim sal Yisrael sheba'oisa hador koloya. Why is it that there was even such a concept, such a havamina, that sheneim shal Yisrael, literally meaning the enemies of the Yidden? It's a euphemism that the Jewish people were facing a gezerah of genocide, of complete annihilation, and we're going to expound many psukim that speaks about the details of the feast, of the banquet. We're going to learn the details that brought about Vashti's downfall. We're going to learn about the wisdom of the Chachamim who were asked by Achashverosh to judge Vashti, how they very wisely removed themselves from the position of being a judge. We're going to have various approaches how to reconcile the fact that when the Megillah introduces Mordechay, he's called Ish Yehudi. Ish Yehudi means a Jew, a man that comes from the tribe of Yehuda, and he's called Ish Yemini, a man from the tribe of Binyamin. So was he from the tribe of Yehuda? Was he the tribe of Binyamin? And much, much more. So Nachamol, 8 lines before the bottom of the Amid. It's amazing, again, that the Goyish kings were aware of the prophecy of Yirmiyahu. They took it very seriously, but Belshazzar, who wrongfully thought that the 70 years concluded, the Yidden were not redeemed, then I will always remain the superpower, or the Jewish people will always be subservient to me. Now I have the right to use the kalim, the utensils of the Beis HaMikdash, and that was his demise. So says the Gemara, Omar, guys, is the second to last narrowest lines. It's 8 lines before the bottom. Omar, Achashverosh said to himself, Ihu mitei, he, Belshazzar, made a mistake. But I will make the right calculation. And what's the right calculation? Miksiv lemalchus bavel, the verse that we quoted above, the verse of Yirmiyahu, where it says, Kilefi mila ois lebavel, that when Bavel will fill the Shivim Shana, God will remember us. It doesn't say that you begin counting from the kingdom of Bavel. And as we mentioned, the kingdom of Bavel, beginning with the ascent of Nebuchadnezzar to the throne, was 8 years, right prior to him exiling Yehoichanya. So the Bavel ksiv, it's from the Malchus of Bavel, meaning my Bavel's Galus Bavel, that you begin counting the 70 years from when Yehoiachin or Yechanya, same one, was taken into Galus. And as we learned, that's 8 years after the ascent of Nebuchadnezzar to the throne. So really, there was still 8 years left for us to be in Galus. So Gamma B'tzir and Tamning. So you have to now add 8 years. So Choshev va'ayel chilufayu. So he went ahead and he added the 8 years. What were the additional 8 years? 1 year you can count the year of Belshazzar. Now, this is something that has to be a little bit more explained, but we're going to go just to point out Belshazzar, you can say, was a king for 3 years. We also learned yesterday that he made that feast after 2 years. So he was in his 3rd year when there was this coup d'etat and where the kingdom was taken away from him. So that's what we're going to count that as 1 year. 5 years together, which is the years of the rulership of Daryavesh the Madai, and Koresh. Koresh again was the one who gave the instruction to begin building the second Beis HaMikdash. And now he came after that Koresh. So there's 2 more years of his kingship. That's 8 years, which now we have the 70 years. And he repeated the exact mistake of Belshazzar. And he said, Kiva the Chazal the Mali Shivim. Now, according to him, the 70 years are full. V'lo Ifraik and the Yidden were not yet redeemed. Amar, he said, Achashverosh says, Hashta, Vadai Sulay Mifriki. Now the Jewish people will never be redeemed. Now, I do have the rights to use the holy vessels of the Beis HaMikdash. Apik Manei the Beis Mikdasha. And not only did he take it out during that feast, but the widest line, 3 lines before the bottom, the Ishtamish Puhu, and he used it. So Basatan came to Satan, Verikate Beineim, and danced between them, as we'll see today. More details of why are we calling this the Satan. In other words, the Satan is a messenger of God that was through some sort of desire of misbehaving that brought about her demise, and Vashti was killed. Now, something is interesting. When Belshazzar, who erroneously concluded that the 70 years already are done, he took out the vessels, he used the vessels, Belshazzar was killed. Here, Vashti was killed. Why wasn't Achashverosh killed? So it's good to know that Vashti was the daughter of Belshazzar. And, like Amalek, the first one that attacked the Jews, they have a certain destiny of destruction because of them being the first. Belshazzar introduced the chutzpah of using kalim of the Beis HaMikdash. Now, Achashverosh is not an innocent person here. But since he was not the first, so the way we got both of them is when you killed Vashti, you both again punished Belshazzar. Belshazzar says that's Belshazzar's daughter is Vashti, and you also punished Achashverosh because his wife was killed. And more details later on the bottom of Daf Yud Beis. But wasn't Achashverosh correct? Don't you begin counting from when Yehoiachin was taken into Golus? So the Gemara says, no, he was wrong. That he also made a mistake. Why? Because the 70 years actually have to begin, not from when Nebuchadnezzar became the king in Babel, not from when they not only dominated Israel, which already happened from the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, when he entered while Yehoiakim was the king, not only from when he took the Jewish king into exile, but when from the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, because the center of the Yiddishkeit is the Beis HaMikdash. So nationally, it didn't look that way. We are no longer the superpower. Or nationally, our king was exiled. No, Golus begins beruchnius. All of the Maimonim that you have in the Parsha of Shemais, that there are 2 lashons, 2 lashonos of descent, and therefore there's 2 lashonos of ascent. Because really, all Golus is a 2-step process. There's a ruchnius descent, which leads into a physical descent. And the beginning is the spiritual lowering of standards and the ultimate redemption, like now that Rebbe points out in the last Golus, Begashmias, we're not in Golus, Beruchnias, we're in Golus. Because that's the beginning and the end of everything. Because you should have counted Micharves Yerushalayim, from the Churban of Yerushalayim, which means from the Churban of Yerushalayim and the Beis HaMikdash is the same. Soif, here we got a problem. Kama B'tziron, okay, how many years after Yehoiachin was exiled was the Beis HaMikdash destroyed? So we're going to read Chad today, 11 years. We had this above yesterday. In other words, it wasn't the 18th year from when he dominated Israel, the 19th year. In other words, you have to add another 11 years. We got a problem. Problem is that the second Beis HaMikdash was restarted. Sounds like more than those 11 years. So the problem is that Ihu Kama Malach, what was the total years of Achashverosh's rule? 14 years. So and this happened, Chevra, on the 3rd year. It says on the 3rd year he made a party. In other words, from here until the end of his reign is the whole 11 years. So Ashi points out, and it took 2 more years because who ruled after him was, we called him Koresh, the Persian. Again, Leroiv, according to almost everyone, that was Taka, the son of Achashverosh and Esther. Amazing. But again, before the Chachamim, during the times of the Tanoim, Paskind, that if the mother is Jewish, the child is Jewish, we didn't follow that ruling then. The father was not Jewish. He was not considered Jewish. But we called him, as we learned in Rosh Hashanah, we called him Kudish. Really, his name was Daryavesh. We called him Kudish because he was kosher in the beginning of his rule. But and when did he allow for us to continue to rebuild the second base of Mikdash? In the second year of his kingdom. So it took another 2 years. Mashma, not 70 years, 72 years. Yirmiyahu said 70, and the word of a prophet is Meduyak. So the Gemara answers, and Allah Maksiv, and therefore the Kai, why does it say that we're quoting only the beginning of the verse? That Beidayin Betelas Avidas Beis Alaka Divirushalayim. This is referring to how the first Kurdish who allowed the building of the second temple to begin stopped it. People spoke negatively about us. And the pasuk continues, and Rashi quotes the end of the verse, and it only restarted in the second year of Kurdish, the Persian, which was 2 years after Achashverosh passed away. So why did it take 2 more years? Or Rava answers, Shanim Mikutois Havu, that 2 of the years that we mentioned above were only abbreviated years, meaning, so when we mentioned that Daryavish the Madai, we just learned this today, and the first Kurdish, they ruled for 5 years. It's not really 5 years. It's 4 years. It's 5 years because one passed away in the middle of the year, so the year was counted for both. So you can't really count it for both. So instead of 5, you have 4. So you're missing a year. And also, when we say that the evil Meroidach and the Nebuchadnezzar, we made a cheshbon that they totaled 68 years. Remember, we said that it was 45 for Nebuchadnezzar. We learned that yesterday, and it was 23 to Evil Meroidach. So really, it's not 68; it's 67, because when the rule went from one king to the other, they counted the same year for both. Doesn't matter. It's not wrong to say that Nebuchadnezzar ruled for 45 years. It wasn't 40. It was 44 and a bit. It's not wrong to say that Meroidach ruled for 23 years. It was really 22 and a bit. But when you put it together, then you can't get it on both sides. So you're missing. In other words, it wasn't 67. It wasn't 68. It was 67. You're missing those 2 years. And Tanya Namihachi in the top of that few days. The Tanya Namihachi, Rashi points out, is regarding the last thing that we said, not regarding Daryavesh, Hamadi, and Kudish. That's a given, that it wasn't 5, it was 4. But the latter statement, that Nebuchadnezzar and Evil Meroidach together doesn't amount to 68. It amounts to 67. So you needed another year to come to the 70, because it says in a Braisa, and the Braisa points out, as Rashi gives all the details, again, that when one king demises, he passed away or he was killed in middle of a year, the new king is completing that year. So we don't always count it as separate years. And therefore, again, we're missing 2 years. And that's why only in the second year of Kudish, the Persian, did he give the Reshus. It's not to start, but to restart. And that's Taka, the prophecy, Bidiyuk, that 70 years after the Churban of the first Beis HaMikdash, did we properly restart the building of the second Beis HaMikdash. Another interesting thing to point out is that Adarabah, Meruba Midatova. So really, we only restarted building it 70 years afterwards. But there was an event that we started it many years before. So there's a Gavaldic thing that sometimes, like the redemption wants to start, things begin, it gives us a stop, and we needed to wait the full 70 years, and then it went. So Amarava, Af Daniel, even Daniel made a mistake, pointing out it's not because they were non-Jews. The cheshbonus of the redemption is something beyond us. And as it says, this is a pasuk in Daniel, that B'shana achas lamalkoi, Ani Daniel, be noisy basfarim, I contemplated the calculation, Sfarim, like we have in the Sefer Yetzirah, as we say in the Bar Mitzvah Maimer. It doesn't only mean a book, it also means a number, right? The three Sfarim. The Sfar, the Sefer, the Sipur, that I made a binoisi means I contemplated. I needed to do bina when it comes to my numbers. That's an expression that said when you make a cheshbon once and you make a mistake, so you have to recalculate.
You say nothing and a mistake.
Daniel was not a Navi, we just had it above, and it doesn't mean that everything that he does is he made a cheshbon and he made another cheshbon. We can even argue that all of the Gedolei Yisrael that gave Ketzim, that said Mashiach is coming, and on a certain ruchniistic level, every word they said is true, but the poyel mamash lamata masar tvachim, right? The Beis Hamikdash is not yet here. But me, the ka'amar binoisi, the concept that I calculated, or I contemplated my calculation implies dita, and indeed that is so. In other words, but we still have a problem. What's the problem? It says means from the ascension of Bavel, from when Bavel from the Nebuchadnezzar, and now we're saying it's dafka to the Churban of Yerushalayim. So Amar Rava, so Rava says, you know what? When you had 70 years since Nebuchadnezzar's ascension to the throne, something happened. You know what happened? God remembered us. Where did that manifest? The first Kodesh allowed the beginning of the building of the second Beis Hamikdash. You can mamish say over there, I'm talking about the building of the second Beis Hamikdash, the Aschalta de Geula. Like something began. Can you imagine how exciting that was? And then it stopped, and it looked like things are going backwards, really backwards, because then we had Haman. But you see that even the pasuk where it says Milois lebavel manifested begashmius by us having a moment of starting to rebuild the second Beis Hamikdash. And b'aynu d'chsiv koy Amar Kuresh Melach Paras Kol Mamlechos Haaretz Nasim Li Hashem Elokei Hashemayim. For who pocket the line lived Nislei by Yerushalayim. Can you imagine? This is the first Kudesh. You know how we spoke? He said, God told me to allow the beginning of the building of the second temple. And you know what? True. Exactly. God put it in his heart. Leiv Malachim B'Yad Hashem. That doesn't only go to Jewish kings. That goes even to non-Jewish kings. Okay. Dodesh, Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda. My Dersif. Koy Amar Hashem L'Mashiachai. This is what God said to his anointed one. Who's his anointed one? Here, not even a Yid. This is the first Kodesh. This is not Kodesh, the Persian Ben Esther. This is the first Kodesh that the Kodesh Asher Hechzakri B'Yaminoi. God is saying, this is what I told Kodesh, the one whose right hand I held. So the Gemara Amalei Ella Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeMashiach. What the pasuk really means is that God tells Mashiach Tzidkenu Choyvel Ani Locha Al Kodesh. God is going to complain. God is going to tell Mashiach. He's going to remind Mashiach what happened with Kodesh, and God will complain about Kodesh. What's the complaint? That God put it in the heart of Kodesh to give permission to start building the second Beis Hamikdash. What God expected of Kodesh was not for him to give permission for others to do it, which is taka what he did until he stopped it. God wanted him to do it himself. And he didn't. He delegated it. And God is going to remind that to Mashiach. In other words, there's going to be an expectation that God has with Mashiach, that there are certain things that Mashiach himself will be expected to do and not delegate to others. So there was an expectation that God had of this non-Jewish King Kodesh that he should have gone to Yerushalayim himself. Ani Amarti, I told him, who Yivne Beisi. And Itaka began it. I told Kodesh, because Kodesh gave two things. Number one, he said that the Beis Hamikdash should be rebuilt, the second temple, and Itaka began for a while. And he was the one that gave an instruction that all of the Jewish people that want to go back to the Holy Land should go back out to the Holy Land. Here again, the Seder of the redemption then, the ideal Seder is the building of the Beis Hamikdash and Kibbutz Goliath. But for who Amar, what did he say? He said, Mi bochem mikol amoy. Whoever it is from the nation of the Jewish people, they are given permission for them to go up. V'yo'al, which means he didn't go up. So Hashem is going to tell Mashiach at the time of the building of the third Beis Hamikdash, I have a Tainan Kodesh. That's the way Hashem is going to tell Mashiach that Mashiach himself will be involved in the building of the third Beis Hamikdash, as we find Moshe Rabbeinu. Mamash, he was the one, I think, for the 7 days. Mamash by himself, he built the Mishkan, he took apart the Mishkan, he was involved. And that's a message in life that if you have a holy endeavor, there is an inyan, not only to give permission for it to happen, not only to give money for it to happen, begufay, that we should ourselves be involved in holy endeavors. Okay. Now we're going to learn a Pedish on Megillah Esther, like we already began. Mamash, pasuk by pasuk by pasuk. Chel, paras, umadai, hapartanim. So Chel, right, the army of paras, of madai, hapartanim. Partanim means either parliamentaries, noblemen, high officers, but not kings. The word hapartimim is written near the Madai. Now, guys, Paras and Madai are two neighboring nations, the Persians and the Medians, if that's the word in English. And from this pasuk, it's mashma that the partimim in the court of Achashverosh came from the Madayim. He was the king, he was the melech, and then they had, but it says in another pasuk, there in the Megillah, look what it says, L'malchei Madai uparas. The word melech is written juxtaposed to Madai. So the nation of Madai, were they the ones who provided the kings or only the parliamentarians? That's the kasha of the Gemara. Huh? And the Gemara answers it was both. They had an agreement. There were two neighboring nations, and they said to themselves, Asnuye asna bahadodi. They made the, no, it's Achashverosh. They all of these kings felt their king will go forever. So the beginning of dynasty. So these two nations were like partners. And they said the following, Iminon Malki, whenever the king will be from one nation, then Minaichu Iparke, then the parliamentarians or the noblemen or the senators will come from the other to balance it. And the Iminaichu Malki Minon Afriki. Then when it says in the Megillah, Baharoisai, this is what he showed off during this feast. As Oisher Kavoid Malchusai, right? Look at these three Oisher, Kavoid and Malchus, his riches of his glorious kingdom. So Amar Rabbi Yossi Barab Chanina Malamed. Not only did he take out the kalim of the Beis Hamikdash. When you say the word kalim, we know this from learning Dini Tumah V'Tara. Kalim doesn't only mean utensils. Many times kalim mean begadim. That's exactly what happened. He took out not only the vessels, as in, I don't know, the cups, the mizrakim that were used in the mizbech. He took out the begadim that Nebuchadnezzar stole from us of the kahuna, and he got dressed in it. Shalavash big day kahuna. How do we know that? Because it says over here in Esther, Yikar Tiferes Gidulasai, the honor of his splendorous greatness as an expression, and you have in Parshas Tetzava regarding the making of the begadim, L'chavoid Ulasifares, as Agzeir Shava. That's the hint from where we know from scripture that Achashverosh donned big day kahuna. Then it says Ubimiliois. So if you read the Megillah, this is referring to the fact that he made his feast. First, he invited all of the kingdoms. And at the end of that Meshugana celebration, he made a special gathering for the people, for the citizens of Shushan Abira. And the question is this the right thing to do? If you are a king and you are in your capital city and you make a feast, who do you invite first? Achashverosh first invited the whole world. And then at the end, he gave special attention to the locals. And there's going to be a continuous question regarding Achashverosh, whether we view him as a pikeach or whether he was a tippish. And we are familiar with such leaders. The same leader. Some people say he's the biggest chacham, he's the biggest tippish. And they're both. So he was both. So Rav Shmuel, Chadamar, melech pikeach. Now, what's the pikchis? Pikchis means baruch, the smartness, the shrewdness, and tippish means a dumbbell. I don't know, a tippish, a fool. It's smart, it's good that the Koren Publisher, that those who live farther were the first ones to get the kiruv, were the first ones to get the intention. Why? Because the B'nai Masya, because people that live near you, call Amos the boy whenever you want, you can appease them. In other words, a king's worry is, I don't want to be overthrown. So the locals, since they live near you, if you shmek, they're thinking about a rebellion, you can deal with them quickly. It's the ones that live farther away that you have to give greater attention to first to make sure that they feel good with it, that they are appeased. The one who says he was a fool, they hold that leadership has to work the other way around. He should have given attention first to the locals. Why? Because because if there's going to be a general big rebellion against you, by whom? By everyone. At least these guys will stay with you. So, he was a melech bekipa, we learned yesterday. So if you're ruling over 127 nations, the whole UN, if there's going to be a rebellion, at least don't lose your own city, don't lose your own country. So you should have given attention to the ones who are closer to you first. And that's a very interesting back and forth, shaykh to every single one of us. You have customers, who do you give attention to first? V'chule. Okay. Sha'alu, Talmud she'es, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, the students of the Rashbi asked their Rebbe, why is it, again, a euphemism? Literally means, why is it that the enemies of Israel were were decreed to be annihilated. It's really the opposite. How did this come about? So Amar Lohem, this is a great teacher. Instead of responding, the teacher tells them, Imru Atem, I like your question. No, you say the answer. So they answered, because they had hana'ah from the su'udah of that wicked person. And here we go, Baruch. That's the Gemara I was alluding to yesterday or 2 dafim ago. In other words, there's no doubt. I know the Gemara doesn't say it explicitly that he served kosher food. Of course, he served kosher food. We're going to see that chachamim were there, observant people were there. No, it's even he was making a big feast, a big banquet. We knew that really he was rejoicing over the fact that the words of the prophet did not come true. His fears of him losing his kingdom quick did not come to fruition. If that's the core of the festivities, then we should not have been there. Problem is, Im Cain, which Jews came to that banquet? The Yidden from Shushan. Again, it's a fact that the Gemara, we just have to know that premise. The Yidden that lived all elsewhere did not join. So if that was the reason, so Rashbi is challenging his Talmidim. That's the reason. It's like Rashbi told him, Im Cain only Shebeshushan Yahargu. Why was there even a Gzeda to kill, to destroy, genocide all of the Soineim Shal Yisrael? So that's it. So that's a good teacher. So the students did the best they could. They don't have an answer. So now they told Rashbi, okay, we tried. Amrullah, Emarat, okay, Rebbe, let the Rebbe give the answer. Amar Lahem, so Rashbi responded, this was happening because of a prior event. And that you see the look of a tzaddik. We are able to see the here and the now. That's a tzaddik. He sees the past, he sees the future. Amar Lahem, Nebuchadnezzar, we're going way back in the beginning of Golus Bavel. He built a Tzelem. And guys, we know that the Tzelem was not a Avodah Zarah. Which is why Mishal, Hananiah, and Azariah said that if we would have been tortured, we would have bowed down. Tosfos says, why would they have bowed down? Yaharik Val Yavar, it wasn't an Avodah Zarah, but he made like many, like, who was Saddam Hussein, all these Rishonim, they made these big Lenin, Stalin, these big statues, but he wanted people to bow down to it. And we shouldn't have bowed down to it. Even though it wasn't L'Shem Avodah Zarah, we should not have done it. And all the Yidden were involved in that. Now, Amrullah, now we got a problem. If we take a bow down, how can God show us favoritism, Rahman al-Atzlan, by stopping the decree of Haman? Was if there was a justification for us undergoing Kiloya, then why did it not happen? You're linking it to bowing down to Salem. Oh, that's something so severe. So why did God forgive us? So Amar Lahem, to which the Rashbi responded, Mamash Mida Keneged Mida. Even when we bowed down to the Salem, whatever that was, we didn't even mean that. It was just a external gesture. Our hearts was not bowing down to Nebuchadnezzar. So the decree was only a external decree. It was never meant to happen. Hey, you should know that it's amazing how the word lepanim can sometimes mean opposite things. Sometimes lepanim means pnimius, right? Here it means the opposite. Lepanim means they only did it outwardly. If someone else is looking, so we're bowing down. Our hearts were not there. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a decree that wasn't from God's heart, so to say. It was never really going to happen, but it looked like we were going to get destroyed. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, lo yasimon elo lifnim. And behind the chsiv, and that's the meaning of the pasuk in Eicha, ki lo ina mi liboy, that Hashem does not afflict his people from God's heart. It's never coming from Hashem's pnimius. It's only coming from some external kaviyachal level of godliness, which is Takawai, it was overturned at the end. And the message of the story is that a Yid, even externally, should never disassociate oneself from being completely connected and bottled only to God Almighty.
Right. Isn't this taking away from the nace of Mordechay and Esther and all the Jews fasting? If we're saying the whole time it wasn't that serious of a decree.
No. It was a serious decree that we needed to externalize. We needed the avodah was to even externally be loyal to God. And that was the fasting. And that was everything that we did then, to externally be faithful.
But then you still need to have this, that even the original Aveda was only like a surface.
It was a surface Aveda for which there was a problem. And the tikkun wasn't the surface. That's the whole Hasidus. The whole Hasidus of the Baal Shem Tov is that a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. That no matter how how many mistakes we can make, and we're not justifying a mistake. The inner Yid is always loyal to God. So the whole sin is a surface sin. Exactly.
It still needs to be brought out.
But you have to bring it out.
That they didn't, other Medinas, other areas didn't come indicates that he first did invite locals.
Which means that he only invited the Jewish locals. He didn't want the
You can imagine how much it costs to cater for the
you can imagine, yeah. You find out all these things, all these details. Maybe it was a bit stingy on top of all of his other mishagas. He has to invite the Jews and the locals. Okay, right.
So what's the pshat that even deep down, somewhere deep down, there's still a spark of Elikus in all of this Tumah and Avodah Zarah or whatever?
Well, don't say Avodah Zarah. We did not make a mistake with Avodah Zarah, but there was Tumah. There was many mistakes that happened. That's mamash. That's a yid. There was mistakes that were made, and all that was needed was to bring out the pnimius. The pnimius we never went into Golus. The pnimius there's never a hell in Behester. Bachatzar Ginas Bisan Amelach. Where did he make this party? In the courtyard. Ginas means a gan in the garden. Now, guys, whoever has these fancy homes, there's a courtyard, there's a garden, and Bisan means a palace. So hold on, where was the party? Rav Shmuel Chadamar. Oh, they made a hierarchy. This is going to be a constant theme. Everyone depending on where you're at. So those who are worthy to go into a courtyard, that was the lowest tier of the citizens. They were invited to go into the courtyard. It's like when you do a wedding and you have to put names. You see people, it's at Sodom. It's a tzara. Guys, do a wedding. Don't sit anyone down because you have to, who's going to sit with whom? It's a big problem. Those who are more worthy, they are worthy to be in the garden, they went to the garden. And the guys who can go into the palace, they were invited into the palace. That's one of either Rav Shmuel. Had Amar, no. He sat them in the courtyard. In that, he began. He does. You don't want people in your palace, but so many people came. The room became small. So they spilled over into the garden, which was a tier higher. It spilled over until they also entered the palace, and then sometimes when you come late, you get a better place. That's the message.
You don't say the first opinion is around the second shul?
So just to say that there is a klal which has exceptions. Whenever Chazal bring two names of Amiroim, Chad Amar v'Chad Amar, why don't we say which one said what? Is because we're not certain, but because there are svaras that lean on the Seder Rishon Achron Achron. And there's sichas on that. Okay, let's go back. But it's not always, there are exceptions. Right. In a Braisa, we have another resolution. That Hoishivan B'Chatzah. The food was in the courtyard. But when you come to a banquet, you want to have a spillover place. In a Lubavitcher shul, you have to have a cheder sheni. You have to have a cheder sheni. So everyone is in the main shul. It ends up you have more people in the side room and in the other shul than in the main room. And he opened up two side rooms. If you want, you can go into the garden on one side. If you want, you can go into the palace. It makes the ambiance a lot more geschmack versus having everyone in the same environment. It says in the Megillah that he spread out chur, karpas, utchelis. What are these things? In other words, there were hangings of, guys, this is Persia. We have Baruch Hashem in LA, many Persians. They love hanging Persian carpets. That's exactly what happened. So my Rav says, chari means a hole. A hole means tapestries, because tapestries are made with tapestries. Thank you. Needlework. So it was, the Persian rugs. Shmuel Amar, it wasn't Persian rugs. It was meilas leva. It was white wool. Hitzi alehem. That is what he spread out. Karpas, what's karpas? Not karpas from the Seder. That's a month later. They were up to Purim. Karpas means kadim shalpasim, cushions of fine wool, like soinas pasim. Al galilei kasev amudei sheish. Mitais zav v'chesev, that upon silver rods and marble pillars, that we have couches of silver and of gold. Says the Gemara, Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer, the same concept they had before. So the couches were silver or gold. Different couches and different people were given different seats. That Horay lekesev, Horay lezav. There was a hierarchy. No, what kind of hierarchy? In Kain atamatul kina besuda. What do you think? Achashverosh, she was a tippish, but not such a big tippish. You're going to invite people and right away cause jealousy. Ella heim shel kesev. All the couches were made out of silver, but their legs are made out of gold. Then it says that the couches were on bahat vashesh, which means that it was on a pavement. No, the pavement was something unique. What was it made of? Asi, that in the pavement you had avanim, you had special precious stones, al baleim, that they are sought after by their owners, stones that are very hard to obtain. And V'cheinu Oimed, where it says in Zechariah that Avnei Nezer, that stones of the crown, stones that are put into the crown, misnoisosois al admasai, are obtained only after a lot of nisyonos. You can only find it on your land after a lot of trials. That's the same expression of mischoitotois. In other words, there was such wealth there that even the pavement in the chutzner or in the gina or in the palace of Achashverosh, in the ground, you had precious stones, and the couches were silver and gold. Vidar visoy charas. What was that? So now Amar Dori that these stones were many rows of them. Shmuel Amar, no, it refers to something else. That Evan Toiva Yesh V'Krachayam. There's a certain special stone, and it's called Dara. And V'Hoishiva Be'emsa Su'uda. That's Dar Visoy charas. Dar means the name of the stone. Seicharas is in the Su'uda, and he put it always in the center. And it lit up the whole room. And as many of the commentators explain, you have the same concept by Noach and the Teva, whether there was a stone that gives forth life, or even if it's a stone that reflects life, there's a certain special stone that if you have sunlight, but if you position it in the right place, it takes that sunlight and it magnifies it. We learned this in Sukkah, right? That Queen Hilni, remember that she put in front of the opening of the Ulam, that chandelier that had as a stone that when the sunrise came up, you had sunlight, but it hit that stone and there was beautiful lights everywhere. And the same thing at night, huh?
Disco ball.
Like a disco ball. Okay, this concept. No, that's what it was. And the same thing was by night with they had torches. So it amplified the torches. That's the dar v'seichotz. No, it means something else. The word dara means freedom. Sechoides means a soicher, business people. Right, we learned yesterday that Achashverosh means he was the king that made everyone poor. He taxed everyone the way it's happening over here. So during that feast, at a certain point, he gave freedom. He told the sochrim, he told the business people that for one day, for 1 week, for whatever the party is, you don't have to pay taxes. That's vidar droir. Right, the korasam dror to the seichrim, gavaldik. The hashkois bechlays all of the Hasidic Torahs that people say, where do they get? It's mamash. This is not the Hasidic Torahs. It's completely out of the pshat, and it's exactly the way it is. The hashkois bechlays off, and he gave he spread out drinks in golden cups. V'kelim mikelim shoinim. Now, I want you to know that the people teach kelim mikelim shoinim means it wasn't only golden goblets. You had a diverse types. Diverse is mishunim. Shoinim means to repeat. So what's the repeating? A Baskol told Achashverosh, you fool, you are repeating the same mistake of Belshazzar. That v'amru lahem rishonim, your predecessor, Belshazzar, not the one before him, but the one who lost the kingdom to Bavel. Kalu, why did he lose his kingdom? Why was he completely destroyed? Because of the kalim of the Beis Hamikdash. Va'atem shoinim bohem. God is saying that. Why are you repeating the same mistake? Malchus Rav, royal wine in abundance. What does that mean? Wow. How old are you? You're 54? He pulled out wine that's 55 year aged. He gave every person wine that's a year older than their age. That's a royal banquet. Bahashasiya kados, and the drinking wasn't according to the law. Einoinus, without coercion. So first of all, what's the law regarding drinking that we say? So here in America, you would say, no one under 21, would be given a drink. That would be here the kados. That was not over there. So Amar Rab Chanan, Meshum Rab Meir, Kedash al Torah. Baruch back. He made a meal. He wanted the Jews to be comfortable because really he wanted the Jews to partake in a meal that's celebrating Rachmana Litzlan, the fact that we're not yet back in the Beis Hamikdash. So he made it according to the rules of the Torah. Now, what is the das of Torah regarding drinking? Ma dash al Torah. So one way of wording it is that you should drink moderately. The only problem is, how do you define moderately? It's very difficult to. So the Rebbe came up with 4 cups. What's moderation? You know what moderation means? However much you're drinking, eat a little bit more. As long as you are drinking a little bit less than the amount you are eating, you're good. It's amazing. We by Hasidim we call it a farbaisen. Farbaisen in Yiddish means that you're taking a little nash. No, the kados means that however much you're drinking, the truth is I think we eat a lot more than we drink. Yeah. What about yayin nesach? So there was yayin mevushal,
which means that they eat safe yayin
I know. Okay, that was a joke. Danny's laughing. Okay, so like this, Mati.
No, it's not. You don't need it. It's a Persian country.
So the whole sugya yayin stam, not yayin nesach. Yayin nesach is also midoraisa, but it was during the times of the Tanoim that they made forbidden yayin stam of a goy. During that time, there wasn't that issue. And during that meal, they served wine like the Torah laws, which means achila meruba mishasiya. Then it says in the Megila, ein oinus, there was no coercion, which means no one was forced to drink. So Amar Abelazar Melamich kol echad li'echad hishkol miyayin medinasei. Everyone was given wine that they are accustomed to drink. What does coercion mean? If you're giving something that you're not familiar with, then you have to go beyond your comfort level. No, he gave you aged wine from your country, wine that you are familiar with. He gave to the Crown Heights people, Ganelis Langer, if you remember. He gave to here in LA, he gave you, a Herzog wine. Then it says, that the wine was served in a way that Ish and Ish were happy with it. Who's the Ish ve'ish? Mordechay and Haman. They were both happy with the way the wine was served. And they're both called Ish. Mordechay is called Ish, as it says, Ish Yehudi. Haman is called Ish, right? Lahavdil, where it says Ish Sarva Oyev. And what does it mean that it was each one was happy? This is very important. See, if Mordechay, if Achashverosh would have said, you must drink, then people would have consumed a lot of wine. Mordechay was hoping that since there was no coercion, the Yidden would not drink. In other words, if the king decrees for you to come to such a banquet, let's understand it better, I think the Yidden had to go there. It would have been a big offense to the king had they not gone there. The problem is that don't drink, don't partake of the festivities. So if Achashverosh would have made a takana, you have to drink, then the Yidden would have to drink. Since he said, if you want, Mordechai was happy because you know what he was banking on? We will opt not to drink. The sin was we drank. Haman wanted for there to be an option. The Yetzer Hara wants for there to be a choice. You know why? Because if we are forced to sin, then the Hamans can be countered. Well, it was against my will. But the Yetzer Hara wants us to choose. So then if, God forbid, we choose wrong, the Haman says, you didn't have to do it. You chose to sin. Each one was happy with the fact that it was uncoerced. When it says, Ish Sarva Oyev. I'm sorry. When it says, Gam Vashti Hamalka. That also Vashti, the queen, she made a feast for women. In those days, no matter how things were not modest, but we're living in a crazy world now, then there was a certain amount of normal, healthy segregation. But where did she make her women's party? Beis Hamalchus. Now, Beis Hamalchus is problematic. Why? Because l'chu'ura, the emphasis is that there was a certain amount of separation, as the whole world used to have. Beis Hanoshim Iboyle. It should have said that she made it in the women's section. Why does it say Beis HaMalchus? So that's the whole point. Amarava, that, they were segregated. But Vashti and Achashverosh wanted for the parties to be in very close proximity because both of them wanted to come to the point where there's going to be an unkosher mingling. In other words, so if you would just write that she made it Beis HaNoshim, then you don't know where the Beis HaNoshim is. When it says Beis HaMalchus, it means that the Beis HaNoshim was mamish back to back. It was door to door, side by side. Why did they do it so close together? Because both Achashverosh and Vashti wanted for things to become immodest, immoral. That's what the people say, that ihu bikari, if you have a wicked couple, so they say, he is going with the large pumpkins. The Itzay and his wife, Dafyud Beis Beis Bebutzini, is going with the small pumpkins. It's an expression that they both are with pumpkins. So maybe Vashti, maybe Achashverosh was the bigger sinner, but she was not innocent over here. Then it says, Bayoim Hashvi, the top line on Yud Beis, Ketoiv Leiv Hamelech Bayoim. On the seventh day, when the king's heart was merry, was Toiv Bayoim. So hold on, he only became happy on the seventh day. So answers the Gemara, Amar Rava, that actually the seventh day is an allusion to Shabbos Kodesh. Yom Hashvi Shabbos Oyim. And Shabbos is a day where you can clearly see the distinction between Yidden and Lahavdol not Yidden. What happens on Shabbos? We take a Yidden also, we have meals, but how do we celebrate a meal? Shey Yisrael oichlim v'shoislim. And what happens? Umaschilan b'divrei Torah. We open up saying words of Torah. Uvedivrei tishbachos, words of praise. Or today you would say nigunim. We would sing words of praise. What happens when the oichlim v'shoisim ein maschilan ela b'divrei tiflos? They right away open up speaking about indecent matters. And in other words, v'chein, that what happened during that festivity is that which happens every Shabbos. And it's every Shabbos. You see, Yidden speak about Divrei Torah, and Oiv de Avodah Zarah speak about indecent matters. That was the topic. The opening topic was which nation produces, if that's the right word, the most beautiful woman. Madiois, Noois. Once the woman from Madai, they're the most beautiful woman in the world. No, Parsiois, the Persians are the most beautiful woman. That's the way he spoke about his wife. She's not from the nation of Madai. She's not from the nation of Parsi. Ella, she's from the nation called Kazdiim. And would you like to see her? So they said, yeah. But you are trying to prove that she's the most beautiful woman in the world. So the nation of Kazdiim, they have the most beautiful women. But if she's going to come in there dressed, she's going to look beautiful because of the royal garments. She's going to look beautiful because of the jewelry. For you to prove your point, she has to come in completely naked. And why did God allow that to happen? Because it says the Gemara, the same measuring stick that people put out there in the world, that is exactly what happens to the person. This is where the Goyim stole from us the concept of karma. It's all Yiddish concepts that they took. Melamed shahoisa Vashti harisha, that Vashti, the wicked woman, she had this illness that mevia b'nois Yisrael, she would force Jewish women to be in her service, but when they needed to service her, they needed to service her unclothed. Umafshita narumais. That was her mishugas. She would force, imagine, Yiddish woman to work for her on Shabbos, unclothed. This taka happened by Yom Hashvi. This party where you saw what Goyim talk about happened on Shabbos. And what was she told? She was told to enter the party unclothed. And that's the meaning where it says that after the whole story, after he killed Vashti, when the wrath of the king Achashverosh subsided. So look at what it says. It says Zachar es Vashti. He remembered his wife Vashti. The Eis Asher Asasa, that which she did and that which she decreed on her. You know what that verse means? Achashverosh chapt. He remembered that Vashti would force Jewish women to be in her service unclothed. And that's exactly the gezerah that came about on her. That Kishem Sha'asasa, he realized that exactly that which she did, Kach Nigzer Olel. The only problem is that we just had on the bottom of Yud Beis Amud Aleph that both of them had in mind to become immodest. Why it did not bother her when she was called into common naked. Why did it bother? She rejected that proposal. Why? She was an immodest woman. As we just learned above the Amar Mar, guys, the first medium-sized wine. So line. So my Tamaloyasoi, why did she not come? Amar Rab Yosef Rab Chanina. She would have come. But what happened was that she broke out with leprosy. Or b'masnisa, we learned in a Braisa, Gavriel came Malach Gavriel Zonav, and he made a tail for her, whether it was a tail, whether it was some sort of unusual appendage that was added to her body. There was something unattractive that manifested on her, and that's why she didn't want to come. And when she refused coming, what does it say? He became very angry. Now, becoming very angry, the Gemara says, would not have happened if she only would have refused. There must have been a lot more in between the lines. As we'll see, she said something that really ticked him off. This is what she told him. No, she didn't want to come. Achashverosh was trapped because he was boasting about his wife as the most beautiful woman in the world. And now she's ignoring him. And it became a power struggle. And in this power struggle, she told him the truth. The truth hurts. You know what the truth is? The truth is that he was not of royal blood. But instead of her just telling him, let's not forget who wears the pants in the house, or whatever the Lashon in English is, what she told him was, you want to really get someone upset? You don't know how to drink. This stupid expression. Du kannst nicht trinken. So she told her husband, Bar Ahur Yorei, you son of a stable person. In other words, Achashverosh, not only was he not of royal blood, but he worked in the stables of Belshazzar. So first of all, she reminded him of his lowly origins. So that's number one, do stable boy, and from my father. And then she added, Abba, mein Tate, Belshazzar, lekabel alfa chamra shasi. He can drink against 1,000 men. What 1,000 people consume, the big boasting. He can drink himself. And you know what? Even though he drank 1,000 men, he did not get drunk. He drunk them all down the table, whatever the Lashon. But you, my husband, ishtate, you become a fool by having a little cup of wine. You can't drink. Miyad, right away, anger burnt inside of him. Now, wow, what a chutzpah. So the Melech told the Chachamim, what should we do with such a chutzpinyak? So who are the Chachamim? Achashverosh, look at this. The Chachamim were there. That means that the members of the Sanhedrin were there. And he knew that no one is going to be more just than the Jew. Now understand the tzara. When you're asked to judge the queen, it's such a lose-lose. Whatever you do, you'll be in trouble. Rabbanan. And that's why it says that the Chachamim were the ones who are Yoidei Ho'itim, the ones who know the times. The biggest Chachma is the Chachma of astronomy. And Taka, that was something uniquely given over to the Jewish people. We are the ones that taught it to the world. And Amar Lahu Achashverosh told the Chachamim, Dainuha li, judge her for me. So Amru, so they said to themselves, what should we do? If we're going to actually find her guilty, she was a meredes b'malchus, and therefore if we're going to rule that she should be killed, so l'machar tomorrow, Pascal lechamre, when the wine effect will leave the king, Achashverosh is going to come to us and he's going to say, hey, you took my wife yesterday, please return her. It'll be too late if they would have killed her, or they would have judged her to death. If they're going to judge her meritoriously, then then he's going to take offense. Then he's very unhappy with my word meritoriously, and we'll have a correction right now. Here we go. I can cut my coffee.
Meritoriously.
Meritoriously. So then chutzpah. So Amrullah, so how did they get out of it? So they told him, from when the temple was destroyed, and the Golino Me'artzeno, we were exiled from our country, Nitla Eitzom Mimenu. God took away counsel from us. The Ein Anum Yoidim, Lodum Din Nefashis, and we are no longer able to give capital cases. In other words, they acknowledged that was their big chachma. It's not only that they abstained. They told Achashverosh, this is a capital case. In other words, they gave in to his anger. If she's going to be found guilty, she'll have to be killed. But we don't have the wisdom anymore. Who should you go to? Go to the nation of Ammon and Moav. Since the Yosfi Biduchtayu, they were never exiled from their land of origin. So they are like wine, Kechamra di Yosef al Durdayu, wine that's sitting on its sediment. In other words, wine has sediment. But if you don't move it, all of the sediment stays in the bottom of the barrel and the wine is pure. So take a nation that is pure, and they'll judge for you. And Vetama Amrulei and Chachamim actually told Achashverosh something reasonable. We're trying to point out that even if Achashverosh was a tippish, made sense, it resonated. As it says, Dafka regarding these two nations, that Sha'anon Moav Minu'urav, that Moav has been, Sha'anon means he has been at ease from his youth. The Shoika to Al Shomarav, that was the mazel that nation has. The nation of Moav were not poured from one place to the other. Meaning, and that's why the taste, and there was a certain wisdom that you have if you're not sent into Golos. The seichel remained in Moav, and his scent has not changed. Unlike we, the Chachamim. So and Achashverosh accepted that. So now, who came forth? Other Chachamim. Who were the other Chachamim? V'akara ve'ela, those who were near, was Karshana, Shesar, Admasa, and Tarshish. Says the Gemara, Amar Rab Levi, Kol Pasuk Zed. This Pasuk really is Al Shum Karbanis Nema. Really, what began to happen was the ascent of Haman and the danger for the Jewish people. So from the outset, there were ministering angels that were praising the Jewish people for God. And all of this is hinted in these words. And all of the praise that they were giving God is about the unique avodah that the Jewish people have by offering karbanos. So karshana means beremes. Did any nations of the world, karshana comes from the word karim. Karim means lambs that are young. Most of our karbanos, right, b'nei shana, were 1 year old. The word sheisar is a remes to the karbanos that come from the 2 turtle doves. Shnei toidim. Did any other nation bring that to you? Admasa is a remes to the word Adama in Mizbach Adama, the altar. Admasa klum banal fanecha mizbeach Adama. The word Tarshish is an allusion to the Big Day Kahuna. Klum shimshul fanecha Big Day Kahuna. The Chassid which says regarding the Big Day Kahuna and the stones on the Choshen Mishpat, Tarshish, the Shoyham, the Yoshvei. Meres, what does meres? Meres means to steer. That klum mirsu b'dam lefanech, that the other nations steer blood before you. And marsana, the final one, klum mirsu b'menachas lefanech, also steering is what they used to do to mix the flour and the oil. Now memuchan, memuchan is the last one. Memuchan is milashin the shulchan hapanim, and where we prepared the 12 loaves. Klum echinu shulchan lefanecha. So that was already words that now, who actually stepped forward and told the king to hang Vashti? So Memuchan said. Now, when you have the pasuk enumerating all of those who were near the king, the last one mentioned is Memuchan. He's mentioned the last because he was the least significant. He was the one that spoke up. So Tanavi learned Memuchan is Haman. Why is he called Memuchan? He actually opened up his own punishment when he began picking on the Jewish people. And Amar Rav Kahana, the fact that the last one spoke up first, that's a klal. The boor is the first one to speak. Now, if you are told to speak by a gadol, a misarvin, sorry. But that's a good klal. Many times, the first one to talk is the biggest head. Now, what did he say? He said, well, one more line. So the first thing he said was that every man should be the soydei bebesi. Every man has to be the ruler in his house. And he sent out these letters. That was the big chachma that he said. Every man has to be the ruler in his house. So Rava says that this letter was viewed by the citizens as such a foolish letter. We need to have the king to write us a letter that we should be the rulers in our house. That already made them look at all of these letters in a derogatory way. And therefore, when the latter letters came out advocating genocide, it was already, we didn't take it that seriously. That Igeros is this letter, if not ilmali, if not for this first letter that made Achashverosh look like a fool in the eyes of everyone, nothing would have remained, not a remnant, not a survivor would have been of the Jewish people. Because the people reacted by saying, what exactly is he sending? What's the letter? He's telling us Leah is called Isha Rebesli. Every man should be the ruler in his house. Pshita, what we don't know that. Even afilu karcha. Karcha means even a weaver, which means a person that has a lowly livelihood, or karcha means a bald person. Karcha bebeisa pardash tachla is automatically the authority. In other words, we don't have to be told by the king to be the authority in your house. Either you are or you're not. And they viewed that letter as a joke, and therefore the subsequent letters was looked down at. We'll stop over here to be continued. Guys, a whole week.
Rabbi, didn't they seal the Chachamim seal her fate? Didn't the Chachamim seal her fate by making it a capital case?
Could be. They were very wise. They wanted her to die. Esther needed to become queen, but they did it with a lot of wisdom. You're right. They subliminally suggested that she has to die already.